So the Spurs didn't make any great moves this offseason. In fact, they actually made one of the worst signings, giving Pau Gasol a 3-year, $48 million contract, and he's 37 years old. That signing basically ruined any chances the Spurs had of making a run at some free agents next offseason, but what's even worse is that Gasol was awful in the playoffs. And this year won't be any different. He gets abused against any small ball lineups, and he's another year older. But anyway, he's not one of the players I'm going to talk about in this video. And I'm not talking about Kawhi either. We already know what he brings to the table. Elite defense, 25 to 30 points a game on high efficiency, and better playmaking. The two players who I think are going to be the X factors on the Spurs are GayAldrich and Rudy Gay.
No, it's Rudy Gay! No! 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 Not this guy! Not this guy! Oh my God!
What's good, fellas? My name's Andy, and in this video, I wanted to talk about these two washed-up former great players. Well, I'm probably being a bit harsh on Rudy Gay. He actually had some of his best seasons of his career in Sacramento. I know in previous videos I was very critical of his playstyle in Memphis and Toronto, but that was mainly because he was the primary scoring option early in his career. When he's the third or second option like what we saw in Sacramento, he scores more efficiently and just plays better in general. We won't be seeing the Rudy Gay who chucks up 20 shots a game anymore, especially since he'll probably be coming off the bench. The Spurs might mix up the lineups a bit in the beginning of the season when Tony Parker is out, so we might even see Gay's role change sometimes. But he's not going to be the same guy we saw before. At the same time though, he was the biggest offseason signing that the Spurs made over the summer, so the team's expectations of him are relatively high. Last year with the Kings, before his injury, he was arguably having the best season of his entire career, averaging about 19 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists per game, and shot over 37% from 3, which was his second best 3-point shooting season of his career. He also registered a career-high true shooting percentage of 56%, and that was actually above the league average in efficiency. Even by watching him in Sacramento as the second option behind Cousins, Gay looked much better than he's ever been, even though he's getting older. He's not forcing up the shots that he used to, he's not playing in too many isolations as he was never a good ISO player anyway, and he's playing within the flow of the offense much more. With the Spurs, that's going to continue too. Kawhi is going to take the pressure off of him just like with Cousins. When opposing teams send double teams to Kawhi, Gay and Aldrich are the ones who are going to be open. Although Gay is supposed to be the backup small forward to Kawhi, but we're going to see a lot of lineups with them together. The Spurs small ball lineup, which they'll probably have to play a lot in the playoffs, will include Aldrich at center with Kawhi and Gay at the 3 and 4. The only question mark with Gay is his injury. It's actually a pretty big question mark. Early in 2017, he suffered a full rupture of his Achilles and needed surgery immediately. From reading his injury updates though, it looks like he progressed really well and should be completely healthy by now. However, players who tore their Achilles do not have a great history of returning back to form. If we look at Wes Matthews, who recently tore his Achilles in 2015, he still doesn't look like the same player he was before. His numbers and percentages have dropped on the maps as well, and he was only 28 years old when he got that injury. Gay was 30 when he got his, and he recorded a lot more minutes and played hundreds of more games over Matthews. So he has a lot more mileage, and his health is going to be a huge question mark throughout the season. If Gay can return to even about 80% of the player he was before, then that would be great for the Spurs. If he can be a legitimate second or third option to help out Kawhi, especially when the playoffs roll around, then the Spurs have a decent chance at making a run for the title, as long as the rest of the team, like GayAldrich, actually performs like how he's supposed to. And speaking of Aldridge, he's the other player who needs to step up if the Spurs want any chance at winning the title. In 2015-16, he was an all-star with the Spurs, and before that in Portland, he was widely considered to be a top 3 power forward in the league, sometimes even higher. In this past 2016-17 season though, Aldridge was decent, but he kinda dropped the ball in the playoffs. He averaged a career-low 16.5 points per game in the playoffs and looked uninterested at times. He played very well against the Rockets in the second round, even scoring an efficient 34 points in the closeout game in Houston. That was the game where Kawhi was sitting out and the Spurs won by like 40 points, mainly because Aldridge stepped up and took over, and Harden had like one of his worst games ever. However, in the conference finals against Golden State, he had one of the worst series of his career. After Kawhi went down in Game 1, Aldridge just struggled the rest of the series. He was getting shut down by smaller defenders, struggled to score in the post, and overall did not play up to expectations. Granted, he was being defended by Draymond a lot of the time, but he usually doesn't perform this poorly, and next season we can't see this again if the Spurs actually want to get through them. Obviously, they weren't going to win the series anyway without Kawhi, but there's really no excuse for Aldrich to be scoring only 8 points in 2 of the games, and shooting 41% for the series. Jonathan Simmons even outplayed him, and no disrespect to Simmons, I love his story, but that should not happen. So anyway, we can pretty much assume the Spurs are gonna do their usual thing and win close to about 60 games this season. Maybe a bit less since the Western Conference is ridiculous. But it's still a given that they're going to make the playoffs if everyone's healthy. But when the playoffs actually start, the difference between getting knocked out of the second round or being able to win the title is going to depend on how well Aldrich and Gay perform. Parker and Ginobili are really old, and with Parker coming off another injury, I can't really see either of them being a huge difference maker this time. They're still going to play better than their age, but they won't move the needle that much. And Kawhi, without question, is going to improve even more, but no matter how much he improves, he can't do it by himself. Every other contender has way better second or third options too. The Spurs need Aldrich and Gay to play at the level of legitimate second or third options, or at least close to what they were 1 or 2 years ago. Those two guys are proven talented players who were great recently, and honestly, the team's success in the playoffs will depend on those guys more than anyone else. And that's all, folks. I'm looking forward to watching this season, and I think they're gonna be a very interesting team. As a franchise that's been known for having a lot of solid players and putting a great supporting cast around their stars, it's actually not the case right now. It's no secret that the rest of the team besides Kawhi is less talented overall compared to the Warriors, Thunder, Rockets, Cavs, or probably even the Wolves too. But anyway, I hope everyone still keeps an eye out for the Spurs. It's gonna be a great season for them. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see y'all next.